Joining us now, ladies and gentlemen, actual Bill Belichick.
Yeah, Bill.
Bill, we back?
Yeah, I'm good. Sorry, technical difficulties here.
I want to let you know, Darius Butler wanted to find you.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Coach knows.
Yeah,
Coach
I run a different operation. I understand technology can get you. We were just chatting there about the Cincinnati Bengals. Congrats to the Washington Huskies. Big win.
Yeah, huge win.
Big win.
Thanks. Yeah, that was a big one. What an environment. First time I've ever been out there in University of Washington, Seattle for the game. And, right there on the lake, the crowd was incredible. What a great environment for a college football game. And big win for the Huskies.
What's the mountain over there? What's that mountain that's right in the back of
Rainier?
Rainier. Dude.
Rainier?
The views over there in Seattle, I did not know. To your point, that was my first time over there last year when we did game day. The stadium sits on like top of this perch, and like the views are insane. A beautiful place. I did not expect.
Yeah, it really is. And the fans are into it. It was Michigan, Washington, kind of the rematch game, even though neither team had a whole lot of their players from last year, but it was still a heck of a game. Penix was there, and it was great. It was a great environment.
Good win for Washington. A lot of questions around Michigan. Michigan goes from number 10 team in America to number 24 team.
Whoa.
And they're saying that slide is quick. They're saying that slide is like this if they continue to do what they're doing. Let's talk about teams that are struggling right now a little bit. Like a Cincinnati Bengals team that is now 1-4. They lose a close one to the Ravens. You get a good hold there. Money Mac probably makes it. We're having a different convo. But instead, is it all, like at this stage, I don't know how many times you're 1-4, there's full panic happening in that building? Or what do you think the thoughts are over there to kind of right the ship for a good Cincinnati team we thought coming into the season?
Right. Yeah. So a couple things there, Pat. First of all, the hold situation. I heard you talk a little bit about that. That's an interesting scenario. I mean, as you know, that holding's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of. I've had a couple of punters that just didn't want to hold. They wouldn't hold because for that very reason. And I've talked to Romo about the playoff game that. He had, with Seattle and Dallas, and there's a lot of pressure there. Some of these punters just want to punt, and I understand. One of the funny stories with Sims, though, is I told Sims wasn't a good holder, and I kept getting on him. He was like our third string holder. I was like, we're going to have an accident on the way to the game before you're ever going to hold for me. And then, of course, in the Pro Bowl, they don't have any holders, and so he actually had to hold, and he held well. He held 2 bad snaps. And so I had to really, put the salt and pepper on it and eat my words to Sims because he proved to me in the Pro Bowl he could really handle it. But as you know, kicking is the ball's not there on it like it is on a kickoff. It's got to be snapped, it's got to be held, and it's got to be put on the spot. And it's never perfect. It's always a little bit off, maybe an inch, a half inch, 2 inches, whatever it is. And the kicker has to adjust to that. So. There's a real timing and execution in that situation, and nobody thinks about it until something goes wrong, and then all of a sudden, it's a big crisis. But going back to the Bengals, you look at the Bengals, and they lost a couple of good games. Burrow fumbled a game away against Kansas City, right? Strip sack for a touchdown, and they miss a field goal, and it's just, I think they're sitting there saying, we're probably the best 1-4 team in football, but. You got to start putting some wins up pretty soon, or it's just going to be, too much ground to make up. So obviously, got to play better defense, and that would have been a big opportunity for them to win a division game, but that slipped away. Hopefully, they'll be able to, for Cincinnati, hopefully they'll be able to rebound and get back on track. But they certainly showed they can move the ball. Baltimore's a tough team to stop. They got to play better defense than that, and then, make the kicks and make the plays you got to make.
Let's talk about Baltimore a little bit there because they obviously end up with a win. Tucker hits a 56-yarder, aims outside the post. The amount of trust that you have to have in your swing, in the wind, and the amount of talent you have to hit that ball at that moment, that late in the fourth, to send it to overtime against an AFC North rivalry, and then hit the game winner, obviously, at the end. And then tell me about this. How do you think Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson are allowed to be on the same team? And how about Patrick Ricard as a fullback in there? On Derrick Henry's earlier touchdown, it was his 100th touchdown in his career, whatever the case was. He falls, gains his balance, then he runs over like 4 guys. Patrick Ricard's pulling him. It's like, is this the year that the Ravens are the most dangerous on the offensive side of the ball? And do they have enough defensively to maybe win this thing this year? What is your takeaway from the Ravens after this big win?
Well, I think, the Ravens every week, they got to look at it like the biggest opponent is the Ravens. They just can't let themselves beat themselves. They can't let the Ravens beat the Ravens. So I think if they can do that, like the fumble, the turnover that Lamar had, that wasn't anybody's fault but theirs. And so they've had some of those. That's looked like some coverage miscommunication and bust there. You don't give up a lot of yardage and a lot of points against Cincinnati. Obviously need to tighten that up, but when they're hitting on all cylinders, when they've got it going right, it really looks good. They just got to find that consistency and eliminate some of the things that they've done that put themselves in a hole more than what the opponents have done to them. So I'm sure that's the focus there. Take care of our business. Let's just play the way that we need to play and not lose the game. And if we don't lose it, we'll probably win it. So,
seemingly, Lamar has taken that next step leadership-wise, too, from everything we see off the field. Yeah. It's like, is this the year where it is they continue to show up? I hope so. Go ahead, AJ.
Coach, I don't know if you saw it or not, but Bo Nix out in Denver, they get a win, and Sean Payton and Bo Nix have some communication on the sideline. I feel like Sean Payton he didn't even secretly love it. He seems to love this fiery nature of a quarterback. Is this something that's normal? And when you see something like this as a coach, are you a little bit excited too inside when you know your player loves it this much?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that's part of coaching, and things happen during the game that they're not personal. They're just reactionary. Sometimes by the player, sometimes by the coach, and I think you got two guys right there that have worked really hard, that are really committed to winning. You can see the progress that they've made over the last 5 weeks. And honestly, these rookie quarterbacks are starting to collectively are really starting to, make an impression on the league, at least with me. And so, Nick's got off to a little bit of a slow start. He's, hung with them. But, hey, Sean coaches the players hard, and he gets on them. Sometimes the players, kick back a little bit, and sometimes they don't. But that's part of it. I think it's probably in that situation a good, healthy exchange.
He said that a quarterback's still has some Ferris Bueller in him.
Yep.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What is that?
I've seen the movie, and
he skipped school, right?
He did skip school.
Yeah, kind of does whatever he wants all day. Goes off on his own, does whatever he wants.
Oh, so he still needs to be a little bit
reined in.
Yeah.
Genius, though, because remember, he did that reverse thing to get the miles off the car.
Yeah.
Right? That happened at the end of that.
Very smart. Until it flew off.
Do you know that movie? Do you know Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
I don't know that one very well, Pat, no.
Nah, not a lot of movies in the last 49 years.
Solved the mystery on that one time where he had the guy put it up on the found out the guy put the car up on the center blocks and put it in reverse, take the mileage off, even though he went back to kill the guy, and he figured it out. So I've seen that one before.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, we're happy to hear that. Young Buck going crazy. You talk about Bo Nix since the beginning, seemingly in Washington. It's been going good. D-Butt got a question for you, Coach.
I haven't seen a ton of movies the last 50 years, but you've seen a lot of quarterbacks. Jayden Daniels, phenomenal start to his rookie year. Obviously, it's early on, but he's playing great. Great job by Cliff Kingsbury, I think, early on as well with this physical kind of run-first almost offense. What's your thoughts on Jayden Daniels early? Do you think the Commanders can keep this going throughout the year?
Yeah, he's had a great start to the season. It's been fantastic. And, he handled the Browns defense with, Coach Schwartz, well. But this play right here is what you can't let him do, is get out of the pocket and extend plays. He can run, and when he gets out and has clear vision, he can throw the ball, make all the throws down the field. So the best way to defend him, I think, is to keep him in the pocket. That's easier said than done, but he's a very explosive athlete and can kill you with his legs. And if he has time and space, he can get outside and, like I said, find some space out there and, find open receivers. So, but he did a good job against Cleveland, and that's not a bad defense. So we'll see what happens this week against the Ravens, kind of a crosstown rivalry there. But, Jayden's had a tremendous start to his career, and they're playing well. Cliff's running the ball probably a little bit more than he did when he was at Arizona. And as every quarterback knows, nothing helps the passing game more than a good running game.
Yeah, Cliff Kingsbury evolving, I think, is a big part of this entire story here. And the way he has the boys responding offensively is damn near historic. And what Jayden Daniels is able to do, we're talking phenom territory here. Now, can he continue it through the entire season once a book is out on you? Obviously, that's a question. Last year, there was a rookie that was able to kind of do it and seemingly is continuing to play at a high level with C.J. Stroud. Tone Diggs has a question about that particular game.
Yeah, Coach, I do. The Bills late fourth quarter get pinned on their 3. They have the ball there. 40 seconds left. They call 3 pass plays when the Texans have all 3 timeouts in a 2020 game. What's your thinking? What's your process here when you've been in these situations? Do you play for overtime? What do you think they were thinking here as a Bills offense?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the thought was there. I think that's, a question for, Coach McDermott and Josh. But for me, I always thought of it as a basketball philosophy of play for the last shot. So we're going to take the last shot and not give the ball back to our opponents unless it's so far away from the goal with no time that we're okay defending that. So whether it's at the end of the half or a tie game at the end of the game, it's really the same situation. In my mind, I always wanted to try to control that last possession and take the last shot. So if you have the ball on, say, your own 25-yard line with 2 minutes to go in the half, you get a first down. And then once you have control of the situation and control of the clock, then you go into your 2-minute mode rather than run 3 plays, run 40 seconds off the clock and give the ball back. A score tied at the end of the game is, to me, the same thing as halftime. You get what you can get, but you don't give them an opportunity to score. And I've seen that in a number of games this year. It's just not the way that I would play it. I would play for the last shot.
Let's talk about your situational awareness, because that is like a massive piece of the New England Patriots' success. They never have critical errors in the biggest moments. And then people say, well, that's because Bill Belichick harps on situational football in meetings more than anybody else. With the arrival of analytics and statistics and everything that comes out, like, well, if you go for it here on this particular play with 2 minutes left, you have a 71.4% chance of winning. What the hell does that mean? Does that mean in the past 71.4% of the people have gone on to win? What happened to the 28.6% of the people that lost in that particular point? Are we not going to chat about their livelihoods and the outcomes of football? How much have you changed your view on situational football? And why do you think everybody describes you as the person who kind of harped on it the most in the history of football?
Well, I think the analytics conversation is a very interesting one, and certainly I've had a lot of them in my coaching career. The issue is really for analytics people is they want data, right? And so they look at all the 4th and 1 or whatever the situation is. Let's call it 4th and 1. They look at all the 4th and 1 situations, and they have thousands and thousands of plays, and then they make decisions based on that. Here's the analytics. This is what it tells you based on what yard line it is, and whether it's on the 4th and 1 on the 1 or 4th and 1 on a plus side of the 50, minus side of the 50, whatever it happens to be. But there's all these data points. The problem I always had with that is it isn't our team, and we don't know who the opponent was. It's just random teams. So if you have a good offense against a bad defense, going for it on 4th and 1 makes sense. If you had a bad offense against a good defense, I don't know if 4th and 1 makes sense. And so I always try to take into consideration the matchup of the game and how good I felt about the play we were calling in that situation. As an example, on 4th and 1, there's a lot of other analytical situations too, but that would be one. So I think there's a balance. I think certainly once you get into the game, you have a much better feel for how it's going. Can you run the ball? Can you block them? Can you protect? Can you throw it? And those decisions, I think, are a little bit more straightforward. It doesn't mean they're going to work out, but I think you have more confidence in how the matchup's going to go as it's later on in the game. I think that 4th and 1 in the first quarter on the first possession is maybe a little bit of an unknown, and sometimes you think that they're going to be in one particular defense, and if they're not, then you could be in trouble. So, but the good thing about that, whenever I did that with Brady, he always knew he had the green light that, hey, if you walk up there, Tom, and think that we don't have a good play here, or you don't like the way this looks, then take a timeout, or if we don't have a timeout, take a delay game penalty. The last thing I want to do, if we don't have any timeouts, the last thing I want to do is get stopped on 4th and 1 anywhere. So if you don't like the way it looks, then call it off. And he was very good at that. He was great at it, not good at it. He was great at it. And so I think when you do that, if you have a lot of confidence in your quarterback and the execution of the play, then that's really where you want to be the most aggressive, whether that's the push or, your quarterback decision making or whatever it is.
Do you think the conversation about you handling situations is accurate, though? Do you think you harped on situational football more than anybody else?
Well, that's hard for me to say, Pat, because I wasn't in the other 31 teams' meeting room, so I don't really know what they did or didn't do. I do know that the players that came to our team from other organizations would comment and say, boy, we're spending a lot of time on this. But in my feeling was always that you're not prepared for these situations until everybody knows what to do. I think when you rely on the quarterback, for example, or the defensive signal caller, AJ, you've been there before, when it's your responsibility to tell everybody what to do here, we got to stay in bounds, or we want to get out of bounds, or put two hands on the ball, or field goal range is the 38-yard line. We got to get inside the 38, or, when somebody has to tell everybody else what to do in those situations, it's just hard. You don't have enough time. There's crowd noise. Everybody needs to know. Everybody needs to know we got to get to the 38-yard line. The receivers and the backs need to know that. They need to know when we're trying to stay in bounds, when we're trying to get out of bounds. So for me, at the end of the half, in a last shot situation, if a back was running the ball from the 25-yard line, he gained 7 or 8 yards, I wouldn't want him to go out of bounds. I would want them to stay in bounds so that we can control the clock, either force them to use their timeouts or get the clock down to where we had a chance to score and they wouldn't get the ball back. So those things like that, it's really important for the entire team to understand what you're trying to do and not just rely on one person to tell everybody. It's too hard for that to happen every time. You might get it every once in a while. If there's a TV timeout and a quarterback can go in a huddle and tell everybody what to do. But when you count on that, I think that's where you end up coming up short.
Yeah, I think it ended up working out for you, your decision there.
He did.
The Colts.
I was around.
Go ahead.
No, I'm saying I was around a few different coordinators, and he definitely harped on it. I want to know, where did you get that from, Coach, as far as like the gotta-have-it situation? We used to have, 15 minutes to just watch over the gotta-have-it situation. Where did you pick that up in your coaching journey?
Well, really, at the Giants, and we obviously had a lot of big games and key situations there, and we learned through them. Coach Parcells was a great mentor on that. And then when I got to Cleveland, that was something that Coach Saban and I spent a lot of time on the defensive side of the ball. And then as the head coach, I flipped it over to the offensive side of, okay, what are we going to call in this situation? What are we going to do, in each situation? How are we going to manage the clock and so forth? But I'd say it really started in New York, and then with Bill, and then kind of rolled into a lot of strategizing with Coach Saban and Coach O'Brien, the special teams coach, because the kicking game plays a huge role
every time
in situational plays, and so being an ex-special teams coach, that was a very valuable coaching experience for me, because when you understand the kicking game, you understand the different aspects of strategy in the kicking game. That helps you put it all together with the other two phases.
Yeah, because of you, I believe, in your meetings, and Vinatieri being incredibly intelligent and loving football, obviously former quarterback. I think he was going to be a brain surgeon if he wasn't a kicker in the NFL. Whenever I got with him at the Indianapolis Colts, it's like every situation obviously involves a kick, right? But listening to Vinny lay out what we should do, what we shouldn't, is like, I feel like, I don't want to say, but I went to like a satellite school of Belichick's situational stuff through Adam Vinatieri because of the special teams being a part of it. Like, there'd be times before we start drive, like, we should not be punting here at all, ever. And then we end up punting, and it's like, well, that's because we make this decision, we do this entire thing, let alone challenging shit, what you don't challenge. It's like, Vinatieri, I think, should be people's like game management consultant, which I assume you've been. Why don't you come do that for the Colts? I don't know if the Colts knew that we couldn't give up a field goal at the end of that. I legitimately, it felt. I don't think they had a clue that would happen. And this dude, this rookie, I think from Arkansas, his name Cam Little, I think his name is. Yep. He just walks out there and just strokes one right in our face, and it's like, how'd they get here so easily? And it's because I don't know if everybody on the field knew that we couldn't just give up 40 yards.
Young players out there.
Jeez.
It's awesome hearing him talk about it, because yesterday the Cardinals were driving down to take the lead, and Kyler stepped out of bounds at 2:02, and Tom got so mad. Tom's like, I wish he would have stayed in bounds there. I wish he would have got down. I wish he would have got to the 2-minute warning, because they didn't want to leave the Niners any time to come back and score. So it's funny him talking about today.
Satellite University.
Yeah.
We're all kind of going through it right now. Okay. Thank you for that, Bill. Hey, thank you for that. Really genuinely appreciate that entire thing. It's Yeah, Tom's finding his bag.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Tom Brady's finding his.
It's awesome.
He's finding his rhythm. You feel like you're doing that in the media world right now? Another Manning cast this evening. You think Tom's doing well? Have you got to listen? And how do you feel? I think you're crushing right now.
Well, I've gotten some good coaching from you, Pat. You gave me some good pointers going into that draft show, and that really helped me out. So I've tried to follow that game plan. You obviously know what you're doing.
No.
But yeah, Tom, I've heard Tom a couple times. I haven't heard him every week. And look, Tom's one of the smartest players that's ever played in this league. He has a great understanding of how to win the game, not just how to play quarterback, but what it takes to win in all phases. So I think he's got a lot of information and a great perspective on it. The hard thing for him and anybody in those jobs, whether it's Chris Collinsworth or Tony Romo or whoever it is you only have 20 seconds to talk about the play. The play was over, they're spotting the ball, and now they're coming out of the huddle, and you've got to say whatever you're going to say pretty quickly. I've enjoyed the Manning cast because it has given a little bit more time to me or Eli or Payton, whoever it is, to go a little deeper on a situation or a play or something that came up because when you only have 15 or 20 seconds to talk about it, it's really hard.
Has anybody approached you about doing color commentary?
Well, I'm just going to stick to what I'm doing for right now. I'm not worried about that next.
Whoa, it sounds like maybe, though, doesn't it? It does sound like a little maybe there. Let's get back into some ball and some topical shit that's taking place. Connor has a question for you.
Yeah, Coach, we're getting to the point in the season now where some teams are kind of headed towards destruction, essentially, and high-profile players are becoming unhappy. Not saying that's happening with the Raiders, but the first high-profile player, Davante Adams, is kind of the first one to want to be traded out. For you, what was your philosophy as a head coach and GM when it came to dealing with players who maybe were unhappy and wanted to be traded, and how often were you able to kind of get that player to buy back in to what the team was doing and stay with the team that you were coaching?
Yeah, that's a great question, Connor. It obviously, I think, depends on the individual player and the situation. Of course, they're all different. There aren't any that are the same, but they're all different. And I think let's talk about just the trading situation to start with. All right, so if you trade a player now that you're not going to bring back next year, then that gives you an opportunity to get some value for the player. So you say, okay, this is week 6 coming up, so I'm not going to have in 11 games, this player's not going to be with us anymore. Is it worth a 4th-round pick or a 3rd-round pick or whatever it is to play without this player for 11 players? Because he's not going to be here next year, and I can't trade him after the season because of whatever the circumstances are, his cap number or his contract's up or whatever it happens to be. I think the flip side of that is why would I trade a player now when I can get the same thing for him at the end of the season? So let's say you have a player who has a good contract that has value next year, but he also has value now. Why not play these last 11 games with him rather than move the player and play without him for basically the same draft choice you think you're going to be able to get in March as opposed to October? And so those are two very different situations that certainly are influenced by the player's contract situation. So it kind of all depends on what the circumstances are and, what your relationship is with the player and what his role is. But like, for example, with, a player like Garoppolo, who we were going to lose in free agency, to be able to trade him to the 49ers for a 2nd-round pick was better than letting him go to free agency and getting a comp 3rd pick a year later, right? So as an example, that's the kind of the thing that you're thinking about is, okay, we're halfway through the year. Can we, we're not going to have him for 8 games. Is that worth the move up from a comp 3rd next year to a 2nd-round pick this year, as an example? So I think if you're talking about the Adams situation, clearly he's unhappy. I think the Raiders are asking for a 2nd-round pick. If that's true, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what's been reported. That's a very high price to pay for a player that's, I'm not sure whether or not he actually, what his contract situation would be next year, whether you could afford his contract next year or whether the new team would want to redo it. I think, for really a 1-year contract, I think that's really more of like a 4th or a 5th round pick. I know the player has extra years on his contract. The question is whether or not the trading team would actually be able to absorb those. So I think probably the most likely scenario here for me, it looks like from the outside in, I don't know the details of it, would be that if the Raiders were willing to eat some of the salary this year, then they could trade him to a team that had less cap space, which there aren't very many teams that have the cap space that can afford him right now. Probably no more than half the teams in the league could really afford him without redoing his contract. If the Raiders ate some of that, then that would make him probably more tradable. I think the second round pick, I'd be surprised if they can get that for him. And then the question is, does Adams want a new contract? Is this similar to the Reddick situation? I think, as a team, you got to be careful. Do you want to get in the same situation that the Jets are in with Reddick, where you trade for a player and then you can't get a contract done with him? All you've done is just absorb a problem and lose a draft choice. You haven't really solved one. So, I think there's a number of things to work through there. What the Raiders are asking for, what his contract is, and then what kind of cap space the trading team has to absorb this player.
Okay, so that Jimmy G trade, there's a lot of chatter around that from the outside looking in about a disagreement potentially. Thank you for clearing up that entire take. And then back to Davante. Do teams say, hey, we want a second-round pick publicly, and everybody else around the league knows that that's probably a third or a fourth, that is just kind of like opening negotiation bids?
Yeah, again, I don't know where that second-round thing came from. That may be true. It may not be true.
No, it's being reported by a lot of people. All the insiders are basically reporting that. Yeah. So I assume if everybody's reporting it, it's probably at least somewhat true. And is that just like an opening call sign, like, hey, that's where we're starting this thing at?
Well, I think, look, Pat, I think if you put the price up high enough, it basically says you don't want to trade the player, right? I mean, if you say, well, it's going to take 2 number ones to get this guy, well, nobody's going to give you that. So, okay, yeah, we'll trade him, but the price is so high, we really don't want to trade him. If you really want to trade the player, then you set the price somewhere that at least it would create some interest. So no different than selling a house or selling a car or anything else. If you want to jack the price up so high that essentially, you're just hoping that somebody would, be desperate or, it's just really a wish that you can get that, but it's not realistic, then you either have 1 or 0 buyers. I doubt that you would have more than 1.
Okay, so you're saying that the second-round pick, though, is a wish for the Raiders, seemingly, a little bit.
It seems very high to me, yes. It seems high to me, given the player's age and his salary. Look, when you give up a high pick for a good player who has a low cap number, right, that's a good trade. When you give up a high pick, for a player that has a high cap number, now you're paying a lot for the player and you're absorbing a high contract. That's a big expense. Watson in Cleveland, you give up a lot of capital and you're paying the player a lot of money. It's a lot to do. So can you do it? Sure. Denver did it with Wilson. The same thing. You're paying a lot of money and you're giving up a high pick or picks. You better be right on those because it's expensive. You're shopping at the very highest market, and you better really be sure that player is going to be worth it and he's going to make the difference that you want him to make.
Hey, thank you for all that. Yeah.